week, and with us this week is Mildred Cherfis of Global Post, Judah Grunstein of World Politics Review, Régis Le Sommier of Paris Match Magazine, and France 24 International Affairs editor Annette Young. Now, let's hope that publications outside the grasp of the Murdoch empire are not engaged in any fear-mongering with the story that we're about to show you. But let's take a look, and nonetheless, at the cover of this week's The Economist, and you can see on its headline, there it is, On the Edge, Why the Euro Crisis Has Just Got a Lot Worse. Or if you want, the front page of the International Herald Tribune this Friday, which talks about desperation over the debt crises plural. And there you see the cartoon in the case of the systemic debt at the heart of an ideological battle over who should pay. In the International Herald Tribune, Patrick Chabat, there you see Barack Obama showing his budget proposals. The Republicans say no way, and then he says, all right, we'll do it your way, and they say no way again, out of the question. I'll give you what you want, he says. So that's Robert Chapat's taking on it. It's interesting how ideological battle lines are drawn among politicians. There seems to be this incredible disconnect, Judah Grunstein, between the worries of investors and the discourse of politicians.
Well, yeah, and I think that that is the essence of the
wake-up call hasn't happened.
The wake-up call hasn't happened, but in some ways, that's the big battle that's going on. Is who decides? Something has to be done. The question is who decides what is done. And right now there's sort of this three-level battle going on between global markets. In Europe, it's the EU trying to respond to global markets, and then at the ground level, there's domestic politics and actual people's and public opinion. And the danger in terms of there are two major dangers as I see it. The first is the economic dangers of the correct economic decisions not being taken, and those are very severe. The problem is that if the correct economic decisions are taken in a non-democratic way, whether by the global markets or by Europe, the European Union, what does that mean for the European Union as a democratic union? What does that mean for democracy?
What do you mean by a non-democratic union?
In the sense that if Brussels essentially imposes solutions like a federal economic governance system that clearly the European publics do not want and have resisted, at least for the last 6 years since the no to the constitutional treaty, the problem is that essentially you have Europe federalizing against the will of the people. And that's a very significant problem for a union that presents itself globally. It's not a power in the sense of the United States with military power. Europe's power in the world is its normative power, its power as a symbol and as a model, a democratic model, a model of economic and democratic excellence. The economic aspect is already very tarnished. To correct it, it could end up tarnishing the democratic aspect of what the European Union offers to the world. Even 3-4 years ago, the European Union was sort of presenting itself to the African Union, to ASEAN in Asia, to UNISOR in South America as sort of a model for regional integration. Right now, I don't think anyone anywhere in the world is looking at the European Union as a model for pretty much anything.
And interesting that you mention about public opinion and decision-making, because those were the exact words used by Barack Obama in a press conference this Friday, the U.S. president claiming that he's got the backing of 80% of Americans and warning Republicans that if they don't come on board soon, the problem won't be solved.
Here's the good news, that it turns out we don't have to do anything radical to solve this problem. Contrary to what some folks say, that we're not Greece, we're not Portugal. It turns out that our problem is we cut taxes without paying for them over the last decade. We ended up instituting new programs like a prescription drug program for seniors that was not paid for. We fought 2 wars, we didn't pay for them. We had a bad recession.
The list goes on, Millie Truffles, of things that haven't been paid for in the U.S. And yet there's this crazed sort of repeat of the ideological battle that shut down the federal government under Bill Clinton.
Yeah, this stalemate is not healthy for democracy or healthy for the U.S., but I think it should be said that the Republicans and the Democrats are getting ready for a presidential year, and I think that is playing a role in how this stalemate is playing out. Republicans don't want to raise taxes. $2.4 trillion is not going to just fall out of the sky, and so something does have to be done. And I think all of the infighting and it's all about vying for position as well for what's coming ahead in the presidential election, whether it's the GOP or whether it's even Barack Obama himself.
All right, a lot of posturing, and it seems as though when you cross the Atlantic, the posturing is sort of the same. Before we went on air, we were talking about the political considerations that go into the German chancellor resisting moves to do perhaps more. She's got her own public opinion to worry about. When debt contagion hit Italy with a whack at the start of this week, editorialists wrote, "While Rome burns, Europe fiddles." That's because EU finance ministers failed to agree on a plan to share the burden of a comprehensive debt relief plan for the continent. 2 days of talks in Brussels for naught. A Friday summit on debt cancelled, with Paris and Berlin openly rowing over a compromise, and the Italian finance minister appearing to compare the Germans to first-class passengers on the Titanic.
The solution is either a political one or there is no solution. Same goes for the rest of Europe. No one should entertain any illusions of individual salvation. Just like on the Titanic, not even the first-class passengers will be saved.
Régis Le Sommier, if that's not a wake-up call to what is?
Well, it's one too many wake-up calls. I mean, we've heard that. I mean, this analogy about the Titanic is probably the correct one. But we've heard that, for Greece. We've heard that for Spain, Portugal, Ireland. It's been, quite a, and then every time.
So I guess the right question is, have we hit the iceberg already?
Yeah. That's another one. No, I think. What we're seeing is slowly, we're realizing, but still, we keep on acting, and our politicians keep on acting. We're talking about Angela Merkel or even our president Nicolas Sarkozy, as if this is a problem, but this is a side problem. They're not really tackling the thing. They're not going, and what you refer to as a European structural problem. Is yet to be defined. I mean, what is Europe today? We have a currency, we don't even have a defense system, but we have many elements that we call Europe, but we don't really know what that system economically is. Is it a big market? Is it, where do we want to stand and where do we want to go? And we got to take, at one point we got to either give up some of our respective sovereignty and build a federation like the U.S.
Which, as Judah just said, is not politically attractive right now.
For the voters, not. But maybe some people have to make, like Merkel and Sarkozy have to say, come on, guys, we got to look
By the way,
it's not
just politicians that are taking the heat. Europe's banking regulators this Friday said that only 8 of 90 banks flunked what they call stress tests, things that simulate another recession. A 9th bank from Germany withdrew from this parlor game. Last time around, 7 banks failed the test, but less than a week later, the bottom fell out of an Irish banking system where all the major lenders had passed with flying colors. And part of this tiff in Europe that's going on while the markets tank is over the fact that there is the sense that the politicians are protecting the big private lending institutions.
That seems to be the case. By the way, I want to get a T-shirt for Obama and the Italian political leadership because they're all saying, "Don't worry, we're not Greece." I think, which seems to be like, it's okay, folks, we're not Greece, we're not there yet. But coming back to what you were saying, Francois, yes, and this is about interests and the disconnect between the political discourse and the reality of what's happening out there in the financial markets. And it doesn't matter if you're in Washington or Brussels or Rome or Paris or wherever. Clearly, there seems to be certain people who are protecting their vested interests, and others are, and at the expense of taking, some very, very tough decisions.
The other thing is that and this kind of ties into Murdoch also. There are these outcomes that seem impossible until they become inevitable. A week ago, no one could have conceived of Murdoch's news empire crumbling. And right now, it looks like he's got to really manage things very well to avoid that. Maybe not crumbling isn't probably the right word, but to avoid a major shakeup of what seemed like an untouchable aspect of the landscape. The same thing has happened in Europe progressively over the last 6 months, and you can't even call it a wake-up call, because for a wake-up call, you've got to be asleep. And this has been going on for 6 months to a year now. Everyone's aware of the problem. The reason why even Greece wasn't Greece. The reason why Greece was such a problem wasn't because of the numbers, which are pretty manageable. It was because everyone knew that if the European Union didn't come up with a workable solution to Greece, investors would lose confidence in Portugal, in Spain, and in Italy. And Spain and Italy are really where it becomes a problem because the numbers are huge.
And 5 of those banks, by the way, that failed that test were from Spain. Of course, empty coffers is what's concentrating the mind in this case. Empty coffers perhaps also concentrating the minds when it comes to Libya. 4 months after the start of the UN-authorized bombing campaign, the U.S. This Friday recognizing the Opposition Transitional National Council.
We still have to work through various legal issues, but we expect this step on recognition will enable the TNC to access additional sources of funding.
So the misgivings that Washington had, Régis Le Sommier, about openly recognizing the rebels that are based in the city of Benghazi, suddenly lifted. The French this week, or in the past week, making noises that, yes, there are political negotiations on tap. There's the sense that all sides are in quite a hurry to come up with a solution.
Well, yes, because they see things. I mean, we have 2 elections in sight, one in the U.S., one in France, and they will be happening about roughly around the same time next year. It was said at the beginning it would be a question of days, a question of weeks. Now it's more than a question of months, and we see that Gaddafi obviously is clinging to power. That Libya is much more complex than we thought at first. It's 180 tribes, and those tribes have tied together, and they have divisions. And we have bet on the rebel in Benghazi. We've tried to help them, but still there's a limit in the strikes. So now we're at a point where everybody is wishing that the thing will be finished pretty soon, and that Libya could be governed by the TNC. But I don't see. I mean, like today, I was watching yesterday a report on CNN saying how the rebel in the West that have supposed to have launched an offensive towards Tripoli, and were like getting closer to Tripoli, are actually giving up grounds. I mean, they conquer a village and then they withdraw. And then they're going back on the fight, and then they withdraw. So it seems that it's a little bit like the same game that we saw in Brega, Ras Lanuf, and that can this rebel army actually stand up and take Tripoli? That's the major problem right now.
And the more pressing deadline is the onset of Ramadan.
Yes. Yes.
Which is in a couple of weeks' time.
Absolutely, August.
Because we heard from this meeting today that they're going to continue with the sorties. That's all well and good. But what's going to be happening on the ground with those rebel troops? Now, there's been some discussion about whether, there might be an interpretation of Quranic law that allows them to keep fighting. But during Ramadan, we know you don't eat during the day and you eat at night. You fast during the day and it's still hot. It's one of those unusual times.
It's going to be August.
It's going to be August, the height of summer. And that is a big concern, which is the reason why the French were pushing very hard this week for another alternative, for a political solution as such. But, it's a mess. And when you say they've only just realised that Libya is a complex place, hello?
Yeah, but I'm amazed. I mean, We've seen that with Iraq in 2003. I mean, like, the U.S. had no clue about what the Ba'ath system was. I mean, I was very surprised. I was the correspondent of Paris Match in the U.S. at that time, how very little knowledge was about how the Ba'ath system had a grip on the society. And it seems that with Libya, we seem to think that Gaddafi is some sort of like tyrant. He is, but that he's grasped on the society. Once, launched an offensive, he will go away and everything is going to be turned for the good. No, Gaddafi has been...
There's a reason he's been there for 4 decades.
Yes, and there's a reason why he still has supporter. He's deeply rooted in some tribes, including his own. And if we don't look at the tribal system...
culture.
Yes, I mean, we're not going to solve this problem,
And hence the Muammar Gaddafi still in power, and perhaps goading a little bit the French president statement he made on Thursday.
It's Sarkozy who should leave France. He should return to Hungary. The French people should chase him away as a criminal. Coalition forces are losing this battle. It's necessary to stop these war criminals.
Mili Trefos, again, he's been there for 4 decades.
Yeah, I think it is. He is playing up the sentiment of Iraq and looking at and using that as an excuse, because it's to say that the coalition doesn't have a clear idea of what its exit strategy is, and no one in the world wants another Iraq, and so he's going to have to push them a little bit so it doesn't become that, so that it doesn't become this war for oil, and him saying that he's going to stay in power until all the oil is taken. I think that's what he's doing. He's pushing the buttons of the coalition to make sure that public sentiment it doesn't become another Iraq situation.
Another Iraq situation. The French had promised there'd be a resolution by Bastille Day. Now they're talking about the end of the summer. We'll see what happens. Mili Trefos, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Régis Le Sommier, Judah Grunstein, and Annette Young. And thank you for being with us for The World this week. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's Business with Marcus Carlson.